All right, giving everyone a chance to join here. I'm doing it from home again, guys. I might be doing it more from home during the summer. I don't know. We shall see. All right. Okay. So if I'm a little pixely, just hang on there. If I lose connection, I should be able to rejoin. And we'll see if we can't make this work. I know the sound isn't quite as good doing it this way. That's all right. Let me check my audio settings real quick. All right, looks like they're good. Okay, so if there are any issues, just let me know. We're gonna do it this way for now though. So I survived camp. 2 out of the last 3 weeks I have been at camp. I survived, no more camps. I only have a ladies retreat at the first week of August, so excited about that. But other than that, I have survived. So now it's just time to enjoy our guests who come in, hopefully, from Ireland in a few weeks and the month of July before we get back into our regular schedule. So I wanted to talk today, though, about living a sustainable, consistent life even when your kids become teenagers, because I'm seeing more and more people my age, in my 40s and my 50s. I'm in my 40s, but and this goes for mainly a lot of it is pastor families, but even just laymen in the church, their families, going when their kids become teenagers, they kind of just abandon everything they've either been preaching or living the way that they've been living their life when their kids become teenagers, because they get a little bit of pushback. And I feel like that's a shame, especially when you have younger kids that are coming up and are very, impressionable. So I feel like that can be a danger, especially if you have younger kids in the home. So I kind of want to talk about this subject today. And we've all seen it, right? We've seen the preacher who has 5 little kids and is pontificating about how his kids will never do this, his kids will never do that. And they always take the hardest stance on everything, such as, my kid won't date until they're 25. They won't ever watch a Disney movie. They won't ever battle with teen rebellion and fighting over dress standards or music or anything worldly. And I sit back and I shake my head and I think, okay, let's see if this is still standing when your kids become teenagers, because teenagers are a whole different ballgame. Adults are a whole different ballgame. I haven't had any indirect rebellion to me or my husband. And I think one of the reasons is that you have to be careful about instilling standards that will be sustainable, so that when your over-the-top standards are challenged when you have teenagers, you won't realize how unsustainable they truly are and adapt to the whim of your kids. I've seen parents buckle at the first sign of teen rebellion, pastors who suddenly start preaching differently when they were younger. Obviously, we should all grow and change for the better. And sometimes we do realize that what we said when we had 5 little kids, we never raised, kids to teens, kids to adulthood, but we realize what we said when we had 5 little kids was stupid. It wasn't right. It wasn't biblical, whatever. So I'm not talking about that. But if we find ourselves start changing just because our teens want us to, and that includes lowering our dress standards, lowering our music standards, lowering our dating standards, then the teens are running the home at this point, not our convictions. So I wanted to go over some ways that we can live a sustainable life without compromising when our teens reach crucial ages. And I'm going to ask you, Denise, so what do you mean dealing with very disrespectful people in the church? Are you talking about they're disrespectful with your standards and they're telling you they're stupid or they're dumb or whatever? Because I can definitely touch on that. And hello, Celine. That is one thing I have not been able to do yet in my adult life. That is kind of on the bucket list, going on a cruise. So I kind of want to find a Christian-based cruise, but that sounds like a lot of fun. So hopefully you have a lot of fun. But let's get into the subject. So first of all, I'm going to talk about being self-aware. when you're raising kids. So if you have little kids, maybe don't do podcasts about how much you know about raising kids. It was really cute. I was at camp last week, and the speaker, he has two daughters, and they're like one turned 7 and one is 5. So he has a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. And his wife, who I've been friends with for years, we were talking afterwards, and she was saying something. It cracked me up because she was talking about how, yeah, my husband started saying something about raising kids. And I was in the back and I was just like this, like going like this, like, don't talk about raising kids, because she's self-aware enough to know that they haven't raised kids yet, right? They only have 2 kids at the moment, and they're only 7 and 5. So when you have a bunch of little kids, be very careful about beating your chest and standing up there declaring that your kids will never do this and your kids will always do this and you'll only ever do this and you'll only ever allow this. So be very, very careful. Be self-aware. Realize that if you haven't raised kids, maybe you should be careful in just declaring everything that other families are doing as a sin, and to talk about how much better you're going to be than all these other families, because your kids will never do this and your kids will never do that. So just be self-aware. Be careful making over-the-top standards when you have little kids. So what do I mean when I say over-the-top standards? Well, there's always that person who, in order to make themselves appear holy, they have to let everyone know about the rules. Like, I am a dictator of my home. This doesn't go, and that doesn't go, and this doesn't fly, and that doesn't fly. And they have to constantly talk about how strict they are, whether that is when it comes to dress standards. You let your daughter wear a skirt that goes to the knee. Well, I make my daughter wear a skirt that goes to the ankles. You don't let your daughter date until she's 18. Well, I don't let my daughter date until she's 21. They're like one-uppers, right? Like, everything is a contest. Everything is a competition. You think you're strict? Well, let's talk about my strictness. So really watch out for that. Especially if you have little kids, you need to be really careful about pontificating about how hardcore you're going to be in different areas. And that could be anything. That could be dress standards. That could be entertainment standards, such as movies. If you go to the theater, if you don't, be careful comparing yourself among yourselves. It's a really easy trap to fall into, especially if we're feeling very insecure about some of our parenting choices. A lot of parents who are insecure kind of fall into the comparison game. So you should realize just from the start, my family is not your family and your family is not my family. The reason that we have rules in place in the McMurtry home is we've kind of seen some things that tend to, I guess, accelerate different behaviors and downfalls in other people's lives. And we've seen some things that have seemed to work with a lot of the families that we look up to, such as Pastor Terry Angel, who's raised stellar children. And so we try to kind of follow or pattern our lives based off of them. And that's not always bad. The Bible, I'm paraphrasing. But it's not always bad to follow men if they're following the biblical way and the pattern in the Bible set forth. So that's not always a bad thing. But just be careful making over-the-top standards when you have little kids. Also be careful making over-the-top standards when you yourself haven't lived them. If you have never dated the way I did, be really careful in making very harsh over-the-top rules. So what do I mean when I say that? Well, obviously, all of you know that we believe in chaperone dating. I've talked about it often. It's just a way to protect your children. There's always going to be temptation, yes, but they do, in case, and this is the way we do relationships this way, so that there's no regrets. So if they're dating someone and they haven't physically given away anything, if that relationship comes to an end, they can go into the next one with a clear conscience, knowing that they didn't give up their purity, or they didn't do anything, they didn't fornicate, they didn't do anything immoral, whatever it may be. So that's kind of why we have that in place. Well, we believe in chaperone dating, and some people might think that's over the top, but I don't believe it is, because I myself lived it. We did chaperone dating and worked out great for us. We made it to the marriage altar pure. And I think that is, it's good, and it's not too difficult or too over the top. Now, I'm not saying that if you didn't do chaperone dating, don't, make your kids do it. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, if you never even chaperone date, be careful putting heavy burdens on your kids when they come to dating. That could be in the form of not ever texting privately, not ever talking to them when they're alone. I don't know. There are some parents that are really, really, really picky about stuff like that. Just no private communication ever. If you have a 21-year-old son where you're just like, I can never let you privately communicate with a member of the opposite sex, you're gonna need to take a good hard look at why you have to have that rule in place. Because my husband put it in a good way yesterday. The reason that maximum security prisons have maximum security rules is because the inmates have broken a lot of rules to get to that point. Well, if you have to run your house like a maximum security prison, there's a reason for that. Why are your kids trying to break the rules? Why are they trying to sneak around? Why are they trying to get around all these? We don't have to run our house that way because our kids have never given us a reason to, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm just saying, be cautious and laying heavy burdens that you yourself have never done. I'm not talking about trying to have a different, like if you were just like, you lost your purity at 12 and you slept with a different guy every 6 months until you turned 20 and you got saved and you want things to be different for your kids. So you're like, we're going to have this rule in place. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about laying grievous burdens on them that you yourself never even did. And that could be in the form of, you're not allowed to look at a guy or talk to him until you're 21. Just putting really big ages on things, just putting really strict rules and guidelines on things. And I'm just saying, if you're going to do that with your kids, you better follow that. So you better never ever text a married man unless it's in a group text. You better never talk on the phone with the married man unless it's a 3-way call. Just the same rule goes for them, the same rule goes for you. So that's all I'm saying. Self-confidence grows when you're raising kids as you raise them. It does. When I was a younger mom, I lived in fear. I know you're not supposed to live in fear, but when it came to my parenting, it was a lot of unknown stuff. Like, is this going to work? Are my methods going to work? Am I being too strict? Am I not being strict enough? Should I let my boys get a job? Should I not let them? Should I let my girls get a job? Should I not let them? And you live in fear because you've never raised a product. I'm talking about a kid. And we don't have kids. You know what I'm saying? You've never seen the fruit of your child rearing methods. So there's a lot of insecurities, especially if you come from a first-generation Christian home. I was second-generation Christian. My husband is third or fourth-generation Christian. So we had a little bit a smidge more of confidence that this would work because we'd been around families that had raised good kids. And I'm talking about good kids. I'm talking about that continue on in this lifestyle, kids that choose it for themselves, kids that are benefits to society, not a detriment to society, kids that aren't using our taxpayers' money in prison, kids that aren't committing crimes, good, morally upright people is what I'm talking about. So because we were around families that had raised good kids, we had a little bit more self-confidence, but not really, because it's so unknown until you actually have the kids. Self-confidence does grow as you raise kids and as you see them making good choices and being a benefit to society. But if you raise kids who walk away from everything that you have taught them, it might be time to reevaluate. And I'm not talking about a lone prodigal. Out of 5 kids, there's a lone prodigal, or out of 10 kids, there's a lone prodigal, out of 12 kids, whatever the number is. I'm talking about every single kid, as soon as they turn 18, is walking away from everything. Boom, 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 just in an order. They're all walking away. You might need to reevaluate. What am I missing? And as moms, I feel like we all do that anyways. If we have any shred of self-awareness, we're always reevaluating everything we do. I reevaluate everything I do. And I'm always having women come to me for advice. But even I don't have all the answers. And so I haven't done everything right. I make mistakes. I fall. I falter when it comes to this child rearing thing. So I'm always second guessing myself. But if you have children that are just refusing to have anything to do with you as soon as they turn 18, walking away from the Christian life, basically everything that you try to instill in their heart from the time they were young, and they're refusing that and they're rejecting that, it might be time to look at how your teaching is coming across. Why are they not getting this in their heart? Why are they not accepting it for their own? What am I missing? So it might just be time to reevaluate. Be open to advice from older moms, especially knowing that you haven't raised children. And I know the majority of the people that listen to my channel are younger moms. A lot of them are first generation moms, and they're looking for advice. Like, how do I do this? So I would first of all suggest getting into church, number one. You need to be in a good, solid church that has good, godly examples you can look up to. And then taking their advice, being open to advice, being open for their help. I try not to give advice unless asked. That's just kind of my mantra. I have an outgoing personality by nature, and I am a teacher at heart. So because of this, I have to make a concentrated effort not to give advice when it's not wanted. So, but if you ask me for advice, I want to give it. There was this girl, she's super cute. I call her a girl. She's like 23 or something, but she was at camp and she was pregnant for the first time. And I told her, I said, if you ever want advice, I'm here to give it to you. I said, I'm not going to offer you any though. I said, I'm a mom of 8. So it was really cute because a couple days later, she came and she's like, okay, I want to ask your advice. And it's because of what I had said earlier. I was like, go for it. And she just had a question about swelling, like her ankles were swelling. It was because of the heat, because we were on our feet the whole day and different things like that. But she was worried it might be bad for the baby. And I was able to put her mind at ease, And then a little bit later, she, because of her upbringing and her life situations, I had some questions for her. And so I came to her and I said, okay, my turn to ask for advice. And so I asked her some things pertaining to like some different things going on in my life. And even though she was younger, I wanted to pick her mind or her brain. I wanted to pick her brain because there was just some things going on in her life that were directly related to my life. So, we can all learn from each other. It doesn't matter. Even if she was 20 years younger than me, I could still learn something from her. And she knows she could learn something from me because I've had a bunch of kids. So definitely be open to advice from other moms, older moms, younger moms, whatever. Be careful who you read after. Because if you read after the wrong things, we only have one shot at this thing, right? You only have one shot. So if you're trying to implement something that's not known to raise good children yet, you've not seen it work, then you're taking a big gamble doing that with your own kids. So just be careful. That's why in my life, I've only ever, when seeking advice, I look for examples like Pastor and his wife. And actually the ladies retreat that I'm going to, Pastor Angel's wife is the speaker. So I try to follow the advice from those that I know have raised good children. I'm not really going to follow the advice of someone whose kids are walking away from it all as soon as they turn 18. That's not who I'm going to go to, first of all. Maybe they can tell me some things not to do. If they're self-aware enough to realize that maybe I made some mistakes along the way and this is what not to do. And I can definitely learn from that. But when it comes from raising a good kid, raising a kid that's going to want to choose this life, I'm going to go for the people that have done that. So, and get advice from them. The Bible has the answers and it's timeless. It doesn't matter if it was written all those years ago. It still has good principles that we can pattern our own lives after. And where a lot is not really said, like there is stuff about raising children and different things, but I feel like we can grab a lot of principles that we can teach our children, such as Proverbs. All the times it talks about the sluggard and the fool and liquor and the whorish woman and different things like that. There are definite principles that we can pull from there as we're raising and guiding our own kids. So number one, be self-aware. Number two, have sustainable standards. So what do I mean when I say sustainable standards? I mean standards that are a conviction of the heart that you would do if no one else in the entire world was doing. And you do it in the privacy of your own home. You do it in, if you go on vacation, if you go on a trip, whatever you do, you're living this life. And so let's just use dress for example. So I only have 3 written down as far as standards go: dress standards, entertainment standards, and dating standards. Okay, so number one, dress standards. Be very careful in establishing something as a sin when it's not a sin. Okay, so what do you mean by that? So it's not a sin to be cute and fashionable and stylish. In fact, this is funny because when we were in Disney Springs, when I was on the pastor's wife thing in Florida, I told the ladies, I said, look around. We're not sticking out like a sore thumb. Like literally 90% of the women were dressed the same way as us. I think websites like Shein and Temu and cheaper clothing has made very feminine, flowing, flowery dresses, skirts, dresses in general. It's made a comeback. So it's okay to be stylish, and it's okay to, just because 90% of the women are wearing, flowing maxi dresses, now we don't need to declare a maxi dress a sin just because it's in style at the time. I feel like some looks are timeless, and long flowing dresses are going to be timeless. I was wearing a long flowing dress from Shein yesterday, and even when I was in public, like running into the gas station, running into the store, I actually got comments about it. They were like, wow, that's so pretty, and wow, that's so flowing, and it looks so comfortable, because it was a hot day yesterday. And they really are. It's okay for that, it's not saying whatever is trending. If flowers are in, we're not doing flowers. Just have a rule for modesty and stick to that. So like in our house, it's to the knee. Preferably covering the knee is kind of my guideline, because as you sit and run or whatever, it's going to come up a little bit. So below the knee is a good guideline, but as long as it's not above the knee. So anywhere from the kneecap, below is kind of my standard. When it comes to sleeveless, I don't mind sleeveless. I don't see anything. My husband is a man. I know as long as it's not showing undergarments or anything along those lines, I feel it's modest. It's just an arm. I mean, I guess some men can be attracted to that, but it's not. If they have a weird attraction to arms, it's not really my problem, I guess. So sleeveless is okay as long as it's not gapping, showing undergarments. And then once again, this is my standard. Your standard could be totally different. You could feel differently about your daughter showing her whole arm, whatever. So then you adapt that standard for your house. It could be totally different than mine. That's totally fine. I'm just telling you some of my main dress standards. Cleavage, I don't like. I do believe that our chest is, in order to be modest, it's nice. It's for our husband's eyes only. And so I like to do only about 2-inch fingertip below the collarbone. And that's kind of where, you're not going to take a chance of showing any cleavage. So little things like, did I put it over here? Oh, let me see real quick. Right now I'm just wearing a t-shirt and a mod sportswear. Yes, I did put it over here. Okay. So this is one thing that is wonderful if you're looking for a modesty panel. It's just a lace modesty panel, and it goes in like this, and it like flips over your bra straps like this, but you can raise or lower depending on how you want it. So I usually keep it about right there, and then it's still following the 2-inch. So anything with the V-neck, this little modesty panel helps a lot. I layer a lot. I do layer t-shirts and different things like that. That helps with just keeping it modest, and it's not really a big deal. You can be warm in the winter when it comes to modesty standards, because we live in Illinois, so obviously we're looking at sub-zero temperatures sometimes. Sometimes I feel warmer than women who just throw on a sweatshirt and a pair of jeans, because I'll have maybe fleece-lined leggings under my knee-length skirt, which is very thick, like a heavy jean skirt. So I layer a lot. I'll have thick wool socks on, knee-high boots, fleece-lined leggings under a heavy jean skirt. It could be a heavy corduroy skirt or whatever. So there are different things that you can put into place when it comes to being modest, and that's kind of just the thing. Obviously, in our home, we don't do pants. Pajamas are different. You're in the comfort of your own home. You're not, like, it's not for testimony's sake or anything. I don't have a problem with pajama pants. They're called pajamas for that reason. They're pajamas. Obviously, my girls are not going to wear their pajamas in public. So, but when it comes to going to bed, I don't have an issue with that. Pajama pants specifically made for girls are not a man's item. That would be weird if a man was wearing girls' pajama pants with hearts all over them. Yeah. So they're called pajamas for a reason. But when it comes to jeans, working out, horseback riding, you can get mod sportswear skirts. These are some of my favorites. Let me show you mod sportswear skirts. See, it's below the knee, and then but you do have the shorts underneath it. So you've got the shorts underneath. So if it comes up when you're, doing horseback riding or anything like that, you've got the modesty there. So you're not showing everyone your undergarments, which is kind of an immodest thing. But that's loosely the standards that I have. We don't do spaghetti straps unless they have a shirt under them. I have also ordered a couple shirts for that. Cardigans are going to be your best friend. They can cover up, sleeveless. If you don't like sleeveless, I don't technically, like, my girls really don't wear sleeveless very often, and I'm fine with that, but I wouldn't be totally appalled if they wore, sleeveless. Walmart has these shirts like this that do really well under spaghetti strap shirts. This was literally like, I don't know, $3.88 or something at Walmart. It's just a white shirt, and it's perfect for going under spaghetti strap skirts, or dresses, I'm sorry, for spaghetti straps dresses. So there's ways to figure out how to be modest. Kaylin, that one was from Amazon, I believe, and I got a pack of 3 for, I think it was about 15, but I did look because someone else was asking, and I could not find it. I did order like them as well. I really like this one. I had ordered, the first pair I ordered had like these clips. Don't buy the clippy kind because they all broke. That has buttons. Buy the button kind if you can, because they have held up amazingly. So that's something. Also, slips with a layer of lace are great if your skirt is too short. So I know all the modesty tips, but anyways, I don't even know. That's a whole big rabbit trail I just went down. But all that to say, have sustainable standards that are not so over the top. Do you really want your daughter to look like an Amish? A lot of women will be like, no makeup at all. And then they get so mad when their daughter wants to wear makeup. And, the no makeup thing is not for everyone. And if you don't want to wear makeup, that's totally fine, but you shouldn't expect everyone else to have that same standard. There are no clear-cut verses in the Bible about makeup per se. Even when it comes to earrings, there's verses that talk about the Lord putting earrings in his bride's ear. So I don't think he's going to do anything that's sinful per se. There's nothing really about that. But then once again, within reason, because where do you draw the line? Because is one hole okay, but then all the piercings on the ears? What about if you have nose piercing? What about if there's just all these things that go into it. So you have to determine where your standard is for your family. My husband is of the persuasion, he doesn't even want to let our daughters get their ears pierced. He said they can get married, and then if their husbands are okay with it, he can let them, but he just doesn't like it. They creep him out. Piercings creep him out a little bit, and that's fine. So you know what? They're not going to die because they don't have pierced ears. They'll be fine. And then if and when they decide, that's not going to be like rebellion against us. It's just we're kind of leaving it up to them and their husbands once they're adults. So But even when it comes to entertainment standards, be careful declaring that you'll never own a TV and you'll never watch this and you'll never watch that, because what if a good show comes out, such as the one Paul Wittenberger is working on right now called, what is it, A Lost City? Something about the temple. Now you can't watch that because you've declared all forms of entertainment a sin. So be careful to do that. And then dating standards. Like I kind of touched on it earlier, just be careful about laying grievous burdens on your kids' shoulders that you yourself have never done. So you yourself need to live whatever standards you put in your kids' lives and not be a hypocrite about it. Okay, so don't make them dress like the Amish. It's okay to be stylish. We kind of just touched on that. Your daughters might do things differently than you, and as long as it's modest, it's okay. Okay, so my girls have figured out all the tips and tricks when it comes to having longer skirts, having modest shirts and different things like that. And that's great. And if their style is a little different than mine, it's okay. It's not a big deal. They don't have to dress exactly like mine, exactly like me. Explain why you even have standards and then have the Bible to back them up. You should be able to do that as your kids become teenagers. Have some hard set rules that shouldn't be hard for a Christian to live up to. And so this is what I'm talking about. These are standards that are sustainable, okay? No movies with nudity, no movies with the F-bomb, no movies with, tons of profanity, no drinking at any time, no being around drinking, trying to sit. If you have to go to a restaurant that has a bar, try to get a spot not at the bar, but as far away from the bar as you can. We have, there have been times where we've had to eat at places with bars. We try not to eat at places that have the word that are named a bar. So if it says Pub's Bar, we're going to try not to eat there. Sometimes we've had to, when we were in Ireland, I feel like the only place in the small town we were staying at were pubs. So we ate at a pub, but we didn't sit at the bar while we were doing it. We requested a table away from the bar. So just trying not to be around it, but no drinking ever, no alcohol ever in my home. I have a hard line stance with that. I will not buy alcohol even to make vanilla. I will not ever put vodka, rum. I don't even know. I think you make it out of vodka. I will not ever put vodka, any type of alcohol in my cart. That is just we have a zero tolerance policy with alcohol. We will not have alcohol in our home. So even before I started making kombucha, I looked up, does kombucha have alcohol? And I read that, you would have to drink, if you left a bottle of kombucha in the car for a month and then you drank it, which at that time would be so rancid you wouldn't be able to drink it. But if you drank it, you'd have to drink 20 bottles of that for it to even make you tipsy or anything. So kombucha is okay. Some medicines that we take have a little bit of alcohol content just as a preservative. If it's not enough to make you drunk, that's where it becomes a sin, I believe, is when it starts altering your decisions while you're drinking that. So if it has no mind-altering effects, then, it's good. And kombucha just doesn't have the capability of having that. So, but I did research before I started making it. I did research it. So research it if you are not sure. So yeah, no alcohol at all in our house, no tattoos, no physical stuff at all before marriage, no language in the home. We're McMurtry's. We don't use foul language. It's not permitted at any time. We ourselves don't use it. That's just a McMurtry rule. No jeans/pants on the girls, skirts to the knee or below, and no showing cleavage. All the things that I listed, I don't think are unsustainable. I think it's pretty sustainable for any Christian to live up to those. And so, obviously none of us feel like we're over the top, but coming from a home where I was raised that way and it was sustainable, and now raising my children the same way, I've lived this life now for 43 years and it's very sustainable. My husband's the same way. He was raised in a home that had those same guidelines, and we ourselves have raised our kids that way, and it's been sustainable for both of us. So our kids should know what's expected, and if they do, this limits any arguments or fights about it. Because we've always lived our life, because I've always had these standards when it came to clothing and movies and dress and all this stuff, I'm trying to pass that down to my daughters, and We don't have big, long, drawn out fights. I don't buy them anything that's going to go against the standards we have in our home. They don't even think to ask me to, and it's just a non-issue. So, surround yourself with good influences. So go to camps and conferences that have the same standards. Look at the spirit of things and look at the spirit of why they're doing it that way. For me, the more important thing is, I don't care if someone lists off, or I live my life by this and this rule and this rule and this rule. They have a horrible spirit and they're putting down everyone else who doesn't do it that way. I'm not interested in that. I look at the spirit behind it, the heart behind why do they have those standards. When they're teaching my kids about these standards, are they doing it to make them more judgmental towards others, or are they doing it because they believe it's the best way to live and God will bless that? So I always look at the spirit of things. I did a split session last week, and Mrs. Bragg talked about she talked about dress standards basically, and I think she gave some really good points, and I liked the spirit of her challenge to the girls. So watch their friends closely. Make sure that their friends aren't going to be dragging them down. If they're friends with only unsaved worldly people, you might want to reconsider that, because bad usually influences good before good influences bad. That being said, make sure your kids know why we do things the way we do it, why you do things the way that you do it. So when faced with a challenge from your teen, be ready to explain, not freak out. Is it a tradition why you're doing these things? Or is it a conviction of your heart? Examine why you even have standards. This is the way I do it. I think, if I left my church, would I continue on in this way of life? If I left the group I run with, and all of us have people we fellowship with and conferences we go to, if you left that completely, would you continue on in this way of life? So the McMurtry mantra of our life is, we are who we are, and we don't care if our friends do things differently. And anytime someone has tried to put my husband into a box and say, you need to do this, he's busted out of that box pretty quickly. So anyone that knows him knows this is true. He is truly independent. We don't really have a certain camp that we identify with. We pretty much live our life the way that we believe we should be, no matter who we run with. I've never changed who I am, no matter who my friends have been. One of my best friends, she never wears makeup. I still wear makeup when I'm around her. I still look the same, act the same. I am Cassandra. One of my other friends, she does beautiful eyebrows and has to do them every single day. And I am just who I am around her. I'm just showing the differences. All of my friends are different, and I've never tried to be someone different depending on who I'm around. I've always held to the same convictions when it came to anything. My dress standards, hair and makeup standards, music standards, who I'll listen to as far as taking advice from, even in my own personal life. I've always been against birth control that will abort a baby, no matter what group I was around, because a lot of, depending on different IFB camps, they are totally fine with that. I never have been. And I've always kind of stood against that, even if I was the lone voice standing against it. Even when it comes to more strict crowds, like quiverful crowds, I have never made it a secret that I don't believe natural family planning is not a sin. So, it doesn't matter. I've always held to my own convictions and my own standards based off what the Lord has shown me what to do and how to live my life. So that's kind of the McMurtry mantra for our life. So when going to camps that have different standards, though, or going places that have different standards, abide by their standards. It's okay to abide by a higher standard when you're on their turf. That's not teaching your kids hypocrisy. That's teaching your kids to respect others and their differences. I've also tried to impart to my kids that, it's okay to be different, and it's okay to have different ways of living when it comes to personal standards, but it's not okay to flaunt it or throw it in other people's faces. So even when it comes to stuff you post on social media, I've told them, be careful. You don't want it to appear like you're using we do have liberty in Christ, and we all do things differently. We don't have to all fit a cookie cutter approach when it comes to every single rule that we have in our life. But if you personally know of people that would be really upset or offended by that, and they are the weaker brother, I'm going to say they are the weaker brother. But if you know that it's going to upset them, just don't do it. You know, you don't need to. You don't need to flaunt. You don't need to comment on every Facebook post. You can keep scrolling. You don't need to showcase your life. Look at me. I get to do this. I'm going to Great America, and you don't believe I'm going roller coaster rides. And that's a silly example, but there's probably people out there who believe that. So people can get a lot of crazy things in their head and kind of go over the top about things, especially if they weren't raised as a Christian, but yet they're trying to raise Christians. They kind of freak out and overcompensate. And so they'll declare everything a sin that's not a sin. And you got to be really careful about doing that as a parent. You know, teens naturally question everything, and it's okay. It shows that they're critically thinking. I don't want to raise a kid who just goes along with it because mom and dad said so. You know, because I said so is not going to cut it when you have teenagers. You have to literally be able to show them why we do things this way. Have an answer. Teach them doing things differently isn't a slap in the face to you, or don't teach them this, but them, if it comes to the point where they do things differently than you. It's not a slap in the face to you. They're different than you. And that's all that it comes down to. Don't have such high unattainable standards for your kids that they're never going to measure up, and you're going to constantly know them that they don't measure. Or you're going to constantly tell them that they don't measure up, and they're going to know that they will never measure up to your standards. Teach them, teach them that every home is different. So if they're mad because another family is doing something differently or is looser in a standard than you are, then teach them, oh, well, this is the way the McMurtry's do it. This is the way, we're the Smith family. We do it this way. We're the Jones family. We do it this way. Whatever it is, the comparison game is never good. So teach them that early. Those who don't have answers will be the first to drop all the standards. They'll be the first to walk away from it. If their parents have just declared, because you're in my house and you're under my authority until you're 18, and you have to do it this way, then when they're 18 and they walk away from they move out, they're not going to do it because you never gave them an answer. You never showed them biblically why it's wrong. So what if my kids go an entirely different way? This is based off of things I have seen, not things I have experienced. So I will just throw that out there. But realize that you have younger kids who are watching. So there's two sides of the aisle that I've seen parents go when they have a wayward son, daughter, whatever. I've seen parents that go one way and completely abandon everything that they tried teaching them, and they readjust their standards to their wayward child standards. But you have to be really careful doing that when you've got younger kids, because the younger kids are going to see that. And it's kind of, it's wrong to be teaching the same thing all these years, and then suddenly just because their brother or sister doesn't agree and does things differently, now you readjust your teaching. Got to be really careful about that. But then I've seen parents go to the other side where they think that they have to just abandon their kid now and not have anything to do with them and ostracize them. Almost like when the Amish shun their own when they choose a different way. And that's not biblical or right either. So you have to stand strong in your belief system and what you believe, but you still can love your kids and you could still love those that are different than you. Be careful trashing your wayward son or daughter to other people. Once you publicly say something, it's out there forever, and it's going to be really hard for them to come back, accept your love after you've been out there trashing them to other people. I've seen this in my own life. We've been trashed by a lot of people, and then we'll be around those people, and it's always a little awkward because I don't know exactly what they've said, but I know they've said stuff, and they're remembering as they see us all the things that they've said about us that's coming to their mind, and it makes them feel awkward, as it should. If you have any self-awareness at all, you'd feel awkward, especially if some of the things that they were saying were lies, weren't true, So even if it's true about your kid, be careful publicly saying things. I firmly believe that Most problems in a family unit should be dealt with in the home, not publicly, not used as an example, not publicly said, especially with technology, because once you say it, it's out there on a podcast, on a sermon. Once you say something about one of your kids, it's out there forever. So be careful trashing them to other people. And then think to yourself, why are you trashing them? Because you're worried you're going to be kicked out of the club for having a kid who doesn't do everything the same way as you? That's really dumb. And just love your kid. Be there for them if they decide they want to raise their standard. Maybe they decide, this was really stupid. You were right. I was a stupid 20-year-old. Mom and dad, you were right. It's going to be really hard to come back to you and be in fellowship with you again when you've just been running them down to everyone else. And I often wonder, is it because parents are so afraid, maybe people thinking that they believe that way? But no, just stand strong. It'll be okay. Family is family. So if they aren't committing outright sins, love them while standing strong in what you believe. Just love them. If every kid is walking away from everything that you've taught them, it might be time to re-examine the way you're doing things. And then lastly, because I hear someone's in the garage using the compressor, hopefully it's not too loud. Lastly, be very, very careful about burning bridges when it comes to family. I have siblings, my husband has siblings who do things completely differently than us, okay? But I don't have to go trashing them to other people to make myself look good or to convince other people. Cassandra doesn't believe that. Cassandra doesn't do that. Cassandra's sister, I saw a Facebook post from Cassandra's sister and she was doing this or she was doing that. I don't need to go trashing my sister just to make me look better. I can still hold to my beliefs without making a public show about it. I don't need to go burning bridges with her. All my siblings know and my husband's siblings know that we love them. And family is family. They will always be my blood siblings. And, none of them are out there murdering people, robbing banks. Obviously, there comes a time when you have to separate. But if they're not just committing outright sins, then you can still enjoy your siblings, even though they're a little differently than you. You can still enjoy your kids, even though they've chosen to go down a different path in some areas than you. It's a whole different ballgame, guys. When your kids get to be teenagers and they get to be adults, no one really warned me for how it was going to be. I feel like sometimes we try to make things appear a little too white-wallish. You know what I mean? We try to make everything appear perfect, and no one ever explained to me just how different it was going to be to raise adult kids, or parent, not raise. They're raised as adults, but to parent adult children and to parent teenagers. And so if I can just be a voice for that, and just hang in there, know why you believe what you believe, stand strong, but still love your kids fiercely. And they're going to know that you love them. And even if they choose to do something differently than you, it's okay. Only offer advice when asked for advice. You don't want to be that overbearing in-law. So only offer advice when asked for advice, and just love your kids. You've done your best. Now leave it in God's hands and trust that God will work on their hearts if there's anything that needs to be dealt with. So that's the biggest piece of advice I have. I hope you all have a wonderful week. I will try to probably do a members live later this week. I just did one Friday, so I think I'm going to wait a few days to do a members live, but I should be able to get to that. So watch for that later. If you want to subscribe to my members only channel, go ahead, and it should be on every video. There should be a way that you can become a member of the channel. So that just helps me out a little bit, helps me pay for the costs of this channel and the blog and everything. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will see you later.